Thank you very much, Jacob. Thanks for having me on here this morning. Shout out to Bob Masterson as well. Thanks for the invitation to join here. So I'll spend about 10 minutes here talking about Alberta's industrial heartland and what we saw in 2021 and what we expect to see going forward here in 2022. So for those who aren't familiar with us, so Alberta's Industrial Heartland Association, we represent municipalities. We don't represent industry. We represent the municipalities, the City of Edmonton, City of Fort Saskatchewan, Strathcona, Sturgeon, and Lamont counties. And these are the municipalities that have land that sits within Alberta's industrial heartland, which is a 582 square kilometer heavy industrial region that it just sits in the northeast corner of the Edmonton metropolitan region. And so our association has been around since about 1998. Those municipalities basically fund our association with the intent of economic development of this heavy industrial cluster. So we are focused on marketing the region, working with investors around the world, companies around the world, helping them figure out if their next capital investment makes sense in our jurisdiction. So as large-scale value-add energy companies are looking at their various projects, which could probably go in multiple jurisdictions around the world, we work with them to help them figure out if it makes sense for their projects in the industrial heartland. And so investment attraction is a key part of what we do, but we also have some government relations working with some of the companies that are operating here already, where there's alignment around working with the provincial and federal governments around shaping of policy, or at least having an understanding of the importance of this region and this sector. And we also have some work on community relations and communications, all with the intent of continuing to attract and build the responsible industrial development here in Alberta's industrial heartland. So the geographical region called Alberta's industrial heartland, it is Canada's largest hydrocarbon processing region. It currently has around $45 billion of assets in the ground here. There's over 40 companies operating in the region. 23 of those are large industrial facilities. And the type of investments that are in the ground here in the heartland, are largely associated with value-add energy processing. So there's a significant amount of midstream assets, so fractionation of natural gas liquids, where you're taking your natural gas liquids and separating into the various components, ethane, propane, butane, et cetera, as well as the hydrocarbon storage capabilities here, salt cavern storage in the region. And that also facilitates offloading and transloading for transportation for exports of natural gas liquids, primarily by rail, either off the coast of BC or to the US. There's also significant bitumen upgrading and refining assets in the region, production of transportation fuels. And then in the petrochemical sector, it's the value add processing and upgrading of ethane and propane to and butane to downstream derivatives, so ethane to ethylene and polyethylene and so forth. And finally, there is some specialty chemicals types, some specialty products produced here. Fertilizers are produced from the low-cost methane, and some refining of metals, primarily finished nickel and cobalt, and other sort of value-add products in the region. So a fairly diverse industrial region, and we are focused on, again, investment attraction and working with companies globally to figure out their next capital investment. So the main reason that the companies are here now, and the reason that we're working with companies around the world is because of the competitive advantages that are offered here. And that is primarily the number one competitive advantage is low-cost feedstocks. And, the main driver of low-cost feedstocks here is, you have this incredible demand for condensate and diluents to the oil sands, which drives a lot of the wet gas drilling in the northwest portion of Alberta, which then, results in significant amounts of methane and ethane and propane and these surplus products that then trade at a significant discount to U.S. Gulf Coast pricing. So to give you some specific numbers on that, if I just look at the last 5 years and I take the monthly averages of pricing for natural gas, in the Gulf Coast versus Alberta, there's been about a 40% discount over the last 5 years here in Alberta. So you have the lowest cost feedstocks in North America. Similarly for propane, you've seen over the last 5 years, we look at the monthly averages, about a 33% discount. And that structural advantage here in the marketplace is expected to continue. And so that is a real driver for companies when they're looking at their next large-scale value-add project, because the majority of costs for petrochemical companies is the feedstocks. And so if you can get a 40% or 33% discount on your feedstocks, it is a strong competitive advantage for companies looking to process and manufacture petrochemical products here. So it's this competitive advantage that's driving interest in Alberta's industrial heartland. On top of that, what we're seeing right now, and there's been a lot of conversation around this, is the industry is focused on net zero or production of low carbon products. And so the need for capturing of CO2 or carbon capture, utilization, and storage infrastructure, that need is significant. And there's tremendous pore space and infrastructure here and potential here in Alberta, and particularly in the industrial heartland. So when you couple low-cost feedstocks with carbon capture, utilization, and storage capability, you have a very strong 1-2 punch for what we see as tremendous growth in this region as companies look to produce low-cost, low-carbon petrochemical products. And so what we saw over the last, I just want to say one other thing about competitive advantage, and Bob had mentioned this. The provincial government did put into place what's called the Alberta Petrochemical Incentive Program. That was put into place late 2020. Also, the municipalities in the industrial heartland also have tax exemption supports for companies investing in the industrial heartland. And between those two programs, it levels the playing field when it comes to competitiveness, compared to other jurisdictions. And so we really think there's a strong value proposition for investments here. And so those advantages have attracted a number of companies here. If I look in 2021, there was a number of announcements of global companies looking to study their projects. So there's a number of announcements around hydrogen and ammonia, which is really around the hydrogen economy. So we have large-scale industrial companies talking about hydrogen production, or at least studying hydrogen projects. And then there's two specific international projects by international global companies looking at ammonia production in this region for export. And so ammonia is a very effective carrier of hydrogen. And so when you look at a global hydrogen economy, ammonia will play a role in that economy. And so the industrial heartland is very well positioned as a competitive location for ammonia projects. So in 2021, we saw a number of announcements around hydrogen and ammonia projects. Bob had mentioned the announcement from Dow that, subject to final investment decision by their board, they are looking at the world's first net zero ethylene complex and looking at decarbonizing their facilities here in the industrial heartland to net zero. And so this again is a multi-billion-dollar investment looking to continue to take advantage of the low-cost feedstock and the carbon capture, utilization, and storage infrastructure that is currently here and that will be put into place here as we go forward. And then we've also seen a significant amount of diversification interest. Companies are looking at biofuels through to diesel and other transportation fuels. We've seen announcements around solar farms as well in the region. And then looking forward to 2022, we continue to expect interest in the methane value chain, whether that's methanol or ammonia or hydrogen, or even such unique products such as animal nutrition products. And then there's companies looking at, a number of companies are looking at taking advantage of the government's interest in having carbon capture, utilization, and storage, which in our view is going to underpin growth in this region as companies look for, again, that low cost, low carbon production of their products. So we really see continued growth around the methane space for sure. We talked about ethane, and I still see opportunities for propane through to propylene and polypropylene. With respect to policy implications and policy recommendations, two areas of focus specifically for us is really around the carbon capture, utilization, and storage, and the federal support for that type of investment for CCUS. I think it's recognized globally that if globally, firms want to meet net zero. CCUS is going to play a key role in that. And then with respect to the carbon tax, recycling of that carbon tax revenue back to companies to help them invest in decarbonization of their industrial facilities, we think is a key component of making sure you get the best bang for your buck with respect to the carbon tax dollars. So those, for us, are two sort of key policy areas that will help with the decarbonization efforts in the industrial heartland in Alberta and for Canada, which positions us as going forward in the global chemistry sector and value-add energy sector. So I think I've been speaking for about 10 minutes, Jacob. So I'm going to pause there. Thank you again for inviting me, and happy to take whatever questions there may be.
Thank you very much, Mark. What I pull from what I heard is that, you're part of the country, unlike many others, can really lead in both storing carbon and so putting back in underground this greenhouse gas that we're all trying to confront, but also create more carbon neutral products and actually sees some of the environmental challenges as growth opportunities. It's been a while since I've been to Fort Saskatchewan. I love the place dearly. Does it sound like I still got a right beat on the place?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the exciting part about the future growth opportunities in this region is I think we're very consistent with what you just indicated. Not only do you have the chemistry sector and the petrochemical industry will produce products that will help other companies meet their low carbon objectives, whether that's lightweighting of vehicles or it's insulation products or other plastic products that go into other manufactured items that can help lower the carbon footprint globally. But also the pore space and the carbon capture and utilization storage capability here will help decarbonize those facilities that are then producing products that help. So it's a real knock-on effect when it comes to telling a great story with helping the world meet its decarbonization initiatives. And so it's one of the reasons we're very optimistic about the growth prospects in this region. We think that low-cost feedstock coupled with that carbon capture and storage capability is really a very strong combination as value proposition.